everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. It is wonderful to catch up with you, and happy December. I hope that you're able to feel some kind of holiday, something milling about. We do have the spirit of peace this time of year that comes upon us. And there are so many holidays worldwide in December. I mean, obviously, Hanukkah, Christmas, Diwali, Ramadan, Yom Kippur, Kwanzaa. I mean, there's quite a number of them. It goes on and on. So I'm hoping that you are engaging with the spirit of peace that is here this time of year to allow that sense of well-being to flood into you. And I know that's kind of hard right now. It's kind of hard when we are dealing with quite a bit, actually, of instability and the stock market's wiggly right now. And oh my goodness, they're not sure the stimulus packages are going to go forward. I mean, there's so many issues right now. That being said, gang, there's a lot to be grateful for. And there are so many people who have struggles that are far worse than mine. I can't speak for you. Of course, I don't know what your situation is. Yet whenever I really feel like crying in my beer about something, I remember that there's people this year who weren't going to have folks sitting at their tables because of COVID. And just maybe a couple of months ago, those folks were running around, vital, having a great life. And so whenever we are thinking about this time frame and the spirit of peace, and you are grateful and having gratitude for whatever you have to be grateful for, maybe just give a little extra heart bubble out to those folks that may be struggling this time of year, because our spirit of peace friend is here this time of year, and they can take that little heart bubble and deliver it where it needs to go. Think of a special delivery for which you have no address. And if somebody is listening to this podcast right now and it's not December, say you're listening to an archive or through another format, just remember that the spirit of peace is indeed with us all the time. So even if you're feeling gratitude in July, you can still put that heart bubble out to those that might need it, especially folks who aren't aware of the fact that this spirit is with us all the time. So just being mindful of that, especially during our holiday seasons, because there's a lot of folks that really suffer extra during this time of year. Because, let's face it, not everybody has a great family. Not everybody has present money, especially during this time frame. This has been tough. So wishing you all the peace and best. And today, in the whole vein of working on the spirit of peace, on miracles that can come into our life that we're not expecting, on receiving gifts and yummies from the universe that we might not even be expecting. Today, I have the awesome opportunity to do a podcast on how to determine what you are viewing when receiving signs and wonders. Yeah, seriously, because I honest to God, gang, I can't believe the number of folks that honestly are not sure if they're seeing the signs correctly. They're not sure they're reading the signs correctly. It's crazy. People just aren't sure of what they're looking at in their lives. And really, you got to ask yourself, if we are spiritual beings in a physical body, which is what we are, medical science has registered up to 3 ounces of mass leaving the body when we die. And obviously, I've heard people say things like, well, of course, dude, because when you die, you poop yourself or you pee, of course you're missing 3 ounces. Except for the fact that they're measuring the entire bed. So any waste that an individual would have is going to go right into the mattress and weigh the same as when it was in your bladder. So obviously, this is occurring as the mass lifts off of the bed platform. And I think that's so interesting. Yet we are energy. We are spirit beings. We are spirit beings, which again, so interesting to me. We're spirit beings. So why, if we are made of energy, do we have, as human beings, such a freaking hard time just identifying signs and wonders? Why? And you who have been following this podcast, those of you who have been gracious enough to follow the work that I do for the last 15 years, really, you've heard me talk about the fact that all of us have angels, and all of these angels are assigned to us. And so why then, if we have angels that are hardwired to our soul the moment that it's created, why do we have such a hard time identifying spiritual signs and wonders? Why? Well, I think the Stockholm syndrome that we've all been forced to swallow in terms of an operating system, the worshiping the captor. I think that if we look at a heady society, and nothing is wrong with intellectualism. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking the clinical, critical society. I'm talking the rough parts of the prefrontal cortex, the masculine center of the brain. We have all been brainwashed to believe that there's got to be a rational explanation for that. And have you ever wondered where there's got to be a rational explanation for that came from? Because if you think back in our world history, mysticism was really what drove history. It drove teaching. It drove culture. It drove the communication of cultural stories. And mysticism, as well as verbal storytelling, as well as art, as well as drawings. I mean, good heavens, we can go clear back to cave paintings on the drawings. Those are all feminine aspects of communication. Okay? The allegories, the myths, the pictures, the songs, that is all a feminine style of communication. Now, as society began to evolve and the haves wanted to create a larger class of have-nots, what we saw is what I like to call a strangulation of intellectualism. And I call it a strangulation of intellectualism because intellectualism within itself is vastly creative. I mean, it can build bridges and weave webs of amazing interconnected ideals when we allow it to do so. Now, when it's strangled, when it's choked out, when it's pinned to the mat with somebody's elbow, intellectualism is then forced into also what I like to call shame corrals. And we take all of these amazing ideas that are intellectual weavings of many different principles, and we begin to shoot them apart. And we begin to attach ego to it. And for us to maintain our position as an intellectual, I've got to make sure that other people in my field are shot down. My ego must be maintained. So I've got to shoot holes in everybody else's theories. Now, obviously, if we're talking science, that's somewhat important. It's very important because we need to make sure that the science speaks for itself, okay? Yet I'm talking, why can't we feel the signs and wonders when we are spiritual beings? What in our culture took a turn to freak us out and numb us to this natural response to being able to communicate with the spirit realm? Because that's basically what happened. You got to think back to the Victorian period, really, and from the intellectual and cultural context that it was coming about, it was quite extraordinary. And we still do have many applications from the Victorian period that still play out today in today's culture. Yet, I mean, one of the highlights was being polished. It was bringing forward a societal norm that was to bring people out of being animalistic and out of the gutter and into the enlightened and the knowledgeable. Now, the difficulty is what came out of that, again, was this ego factor, this shame corral factor that I was talking about here. And really, the Victorian context put intellectualism into a very uplifted spotlight, about 1830 to 1890-ish, give it some change there. So especially in the United States, which was the new world, okay, we were a wide open canvas back then, gang. We were a place you went where there were parts of this continent, the North American continent in America, and that were not even charted yet, okay? So if you came here and you were someone who was male and Caucasian, and you wanted to seek your fortune, this was the place to be, especially if you could lay down as an intellectual or a business auteur. And this is where we see a lot of the turn of the century. Immigrants came over here and just kicked it up a million notches. We think of Carnegie. This is an individual who came and made massive headway. And so we've got all of these folks who came over here, and the intellectualism of the Victorian time frame was there's got to be reason to it. And really this had to do with trying to rein in some of the debauchery of the monarchies, and it had to do with it was an enlightened time, a golden time, a gilded time. That being said, it really began to draw a line between the emotional and speculative speech, or really way of looking at something in terms of the masculine especially, and the old folklore, the old world. You got to remember, back in the Victorian era, everything was about modernizing. We were just coming up on the Industrial Revolution. This was all about moving into the modern new world. So old folklore stories from the Celtic countries, it was like, who wants to hear that? Let's look at this new enlightened way of evaluating and having intellectualized discussions. We don't want to hear about grandma's story of how her grandpa wrestled a sheep down and won grandma back in the old country. Nobody wanted that. It was all about this polished period. And obviously the Victorian era goes way, way more into a lot of other details and cultural relevance also. But if we're trying to figure out how do we divorce ourselves from feeling as much, it had to do with this movement of intellectualism and that very heavy focus on the masculine processing center of the brain, or the prefrontal cortex. Now, it's also really important to note that during the Victorian era, there was a massive spiritualist movement also. Yet they really kind of hid it. They hid it amongst mainstream society. You could go see the medium, yet the medium was awesome because she would hide in a secret room of an apartment flat. There was a spiritualist movement, yet it was still seen as somewhat occult by most. It was seen as kind of an old country dust-up, yet there were intellectuals in the Victorian movement who thought of it as a science. And that was somewhat a way that the spiritualist movement during the Victorian era came out to survive today, was because, it's a science. It's a science. So this is how we ended up being so divorced and devoid of a lot of our feelers, in part was due to this era. The other portion, and then I'll quit with my history lesson, is that, let's just face facts, gang, the United States was built by religious extremists called pilgrims. They were so extreme. The Puritans were cray, okay? And it's really important for us to remember in our American history that the human beings who sailed over here in ships and landed on the East Coast and got off of those boats and looked out and saw indigenous people who absolutely populated this entire continent. And of course, the the white settlers thought, these folks need to move. We're here. Yet it's very important to remember that those folks were pretty crazy, and they didn't really even believe in most of the spiritual tenets of the Bible. They believed in the laws of the Bible. They were not a spiritual group. They were a biblical legalist group, a very extreme cult that freaked out England so badly that England gave them the opportunity to choose death because they were so weird and creepy. Or you can go settle our new world for us. It's kind of like, letting somebody wade into the arena with the lions, and if you survive, we'll give you a cool set of armor. So anyway, it's just important to remember that the United States was founded, the European settlers. I'm not talking about our indigenous nations, which are highly spiritual and have never really walked away from that tradition. Yet I'm talking our white people settlers were very invested in not feeling. Okay, so couple that with the Victorian era that was to come much later. Yet here in the United States, Man, we've been beating out of ourselves our innate ability to discern signs and wonders for, 400 years, 300 years, 200 years. I mean, how far back do you want to go? And we discounted the spiritual givings and leanings of our indigenous brothers and sisters that lived here before we brought them a bunch of plagues and spread like a disease all over this continent. So what I would tell you is that there's a reason that it's hard for most people to discern signs and wonders. And the other thing too is, if we're going to go with the religious extremist stuff, let's not even start with the Christian Bible, which goes on and on about how it's bad. I remember in Deuteronomy, in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, there's a passage in there someplace that talks about the fact that if a person is discerning signs for a king, they talk about it being a cultist and that person being aligned with the wrong types of spirits and to stay away from those discerners. Even though, a lot of those guys in the Bible had their own psychics, they had their own mediums, but they called them different things. They called them prophets and other things. So we had a lot of demonization around discerning spiritual energy in your own realm, starting with traditional Christian religion in this country. Yet now that we're done with our little history lesson on why we've all become so numb to our own spiritual gifts here in America and beyond, other places, of course, have their own stories. I would point out that even though our brain wants to tell us a different story and wants us to give it proof, because now we're generationally, our DNA is defaulting to intellectualism for many, many people. Now, we're actually starting to see a reverting of that. I don't know if you paid attention to society the last 5, 6, 8 years, but there is also a particular de-evolution of how we deal with one another societally. So on one hand, we have critical thinking, which is greatly valued. And on the other hand, we have absolute anarchy and badassery, which then turns into chaos. And I prefer to think of myself as a critically thinking badass, personally. However, when we're dealing with how to discern the energies out there, remember that you are a spirit being, and that spiritual energy that resonates in you, that spiritual energy knows when it's on top of something that's trying to communicate with us. So what are some of the different types of signs and wonders? I mean, we think about numerals, seeing 111 or 444 or 555. And you've probably heard me talk a great deal about the fact that those numerals that we see and discern, those numerals are angelic prompts. And again, I can repeat myself till I'm blue in the face about this, but I think it's fascinating. 3 rocks in our dimension are 3 orgulls in another dimension, are 3 wiki pickies on another planet. 3 is 3. 3 is 3. So numerals, numbers, angels use numbers to communicate across multiple dimensions, multiple platforms to many different cultures. Because again, 3 is 3. So when we see numbers, that's oftentimes our angels who are trying to get our attention. And different numbers carry different numeric and energetic properties. They call that numerology. And I'm sure you've probably seen like 111, 40 times. Well, you can't see it 40 times in a day. You can see it twice if you count 1111, maybe 3 times in a day. Yeah, you could. You could have 11:11 a.m., 1:11 p.m., and 11:11 p.m. So technically speaking, if you were only relying on your clock, you could see that 3 times a day. Now, never mind where else you're going to see it when you're out and about. And of course, 1111 is the angel number that suggests that we watch what we're thinking about, because thoughts are things. So numbers and numeric patterns are heavily prevalent when angelic life is attempting to speak with us. That's a thing. That's actually a thing. That's not just a bunch of weird Wikipedia crap. Angels speak in patterns. They speak in numbers. They speak in tones. And what is music? It's math. Okay. And we musicians, we're kind of down with that concept. So angels are number beings. Then they will also make sure that we are paying attention when synchronistically something phenomenal happens at the exact same time that we need to be witnessing that phenomenon. That's also an angel thing. So what am I talking about? Patterns are numbers, okay? And angels want to make sure that they are sending us messages, not only numerical messages, however, in patterns that we will recognize and assign significance to. So let me just give you an example. Patterns, okay? We have food patterns. I might think that a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs means something really, really special to me. Maybe in my mind, that means that my family is with me. Now, angels are aware of what we assign significance to, okay? Or to that which we assign significance, if I were to speak proper English. However, they're aware that we place value on certain things. So they're going to make sure that our attention is drawn to those things in moments where we need a sign or we need a nudge. You got to remember, gang, think about nature. Nature doesn't waste anything, right? It doesn't. Everything is recycled in nature. Think about the chaotic nature of how much free will is happening at one time on the planet Earth. Just counting the human beings alone, we're not even dealing with our animal life or our sea life here. Just counting human beings alone, there's almost 8 billion trains of life path of free will choice making going on every nanosecond on the planet Earth. Okay? Now, when people say to me, how can you believe in a God? I'm like, do you really think that if there was not some sort of system down here, you don't have to call it God. I don't care what you call it. However, do you think that the mathematical probability of having almost 8 billion individual thinkers all executing, if they were, completely individual life paths and executing choices based on chaotic free will, do you really believe that without some sort of frequency or some sort of plan of the whole thing, we wouldn't be just one giant train wreck? Think about how much free will could just jam the pipeline there. There's obviously a flow to what we're doing. And obviously, some of that flow is way out of my pay grade. Some of that flow is completely in my pay grade. It depends on what it is. So when we look at this from the standpoint of how do angels allow us to see something that we would consider a sign. So say for me, going back to the bowl of spaghetti, say I'm going to make a really difficult decision about buying a house. And I want that house to really feel like the house I grew up in with my grandparents. And God dang it, I go and I look at this house and, I basically like it, but maybe it needs a little too much work. Maybe the kitchen just makes me want to throw up in my mouth and cry because 1975 threw up in the kitchen and left all of those avocado cabinets everywhere. Maybe it's just a little off, but boy, it's got a great price tag on it. And the vibes are okay, but oh my God, maybe it's got some really hideous wallpaper, and wallpaper's hard to take off. But man, the house is a good amount of money. I could afford it. My grandparents' house, let's just say it was a really humble home, and their cabinets weren't top notch, gosh. And I'm on the fence about this house. And I say to the universe, man, I need a sign. I need a sign that, I think this house is going to be okay, but I'm kind of afraid of the kitchen. I'm kind of afraid of the few bathrooms. I'm afraid of buying something I'm going to have to sink another $30,000 into to make myself happy in it. But God, there's something that feels so good about this house. I need a sign. Well, in this case, angels know, again, they're pattern recognizers. They know what I will recognize as a sign of home and a sign of comfort. So maybe there's a realtor who happens to be throwing this open house. And the realtor, for some crazy reason, decides it's a good idea to cook a meal in the house so that when people come in, they can smell food cooking and it automatically triggers a sense of home. Maybe the realtor realizes, hey, this price of a house is going to go quickly, except for the fact that it's just butt stinking ugly on the inside, so we got to do something. So this realtor, all of a sudden, out of absolutely nowhere, quote, nowhere, okay, finger quotes, that realtor decides while you're looking through the house to put on a pot of spaghetti. It's just for some reason, spaghetti pops into this realtor's head. So this realtor puts on spaghetti and you're wandering around and all of a sudden you start smelling spaghetti and you're like, you gotta be kidding me. That is my sign of home. What are the odds that the realtor is making spaghetti? So then you go downstairs and you talk to the realtor and the realtor's like, yeah, I just thought spaghetti might be a nice, addition to the kitchen. And you say to the realtor, well, that's my sign to buy the house. And the realtor says, well, I'm really glad that you're the first person who said that because the owners just called me and they just knocked $10,000 off this house. Plus they're willing to update the kitchen. Okay, this is how signs work. And so was it random? Not really. I mean, your angelic beings were like, okay, if you're going to be cooking food, boy, I'll tell you what, spaghetti would be good. And obviously, I am super simplifying. Yet oftentimes, we are in the right place at the right time. Maybe that realtor had already decided to cook spaghetti, and you go in there to check out the house, and boom, there's a spaghetti because you were meant to buy the house. So the realtor and you were brought to that moment so the universe could utilize a sign that they know exists within you to confirm that that's a good choice for you. That's how signs work. So if we over-intellectualize the spaghetti process, and now I freaking want spaghetti and meatballs so bad. Oh my God, I am dying. Okay, got to get through this podcast and then I'm going to go make spaghetti and meatballs. I'm not even kidding. However, my mouth is watering. Gah! Jeez, it's an Italian affliction. What am I doing to myself here? Okay, focus, Danielle, focus. Here we go. So when you're talking about synchronicities, our brain can get in the way. And we can apply all of that puritanical, you better not pay attention to your emotions or signs because that could be the devil misleading you. The Puritans legitimately believed that emotion came from the devil. They believed sex came from the devil, sexual pleasure. Now, men were supposed to be able to complete their sexual cycle, of course, so children could happen. Yet women really weren't supposed to be having a good time there. They were supposed to stoically just lay there and stare at the ceiling and pray to God and please give me a baby, God, and the guy saying hallelujah. And if the woman had too much pleasure or she showed that she had too much pleasure, she'd go right in the stocks. Of course, now, it was important for men to complete their sexual action because science back then still believed that a lot of the creation of the baby came from the semen because they couldn't see the eggs up there. They knew women had periods, but they just figured that was God's way of letting you know that it was a good time to, make sure that everything was rocking and rolling there. It wasn't until later we figured out that women actually contributed as well genetically to children. So you gotta consider that feelings and noticing signs and synchronicities were considered devil's work by the people who established the United States of America, the Western settlers, I'm talking, who came over here to establish the United States, the colonizers. So when we take it a step further, and we look at the Victorian era's influence on the golden era of intellectualization. Why don't we notice that the spaghetti was meant for us? Because our brain, we have at least 100 and some years of our brain trying to find a rational explanation for that. And intellectualization is also genetic. It's a genetic problem-solving trait. Remember, our genes want to keep us safe. They want to keep safe our children. So if I'm somebody who's figured out how to intellectually solve a problem, I'm likely going to pass on, maybe not that exact answer, but the mechanism through which I mentally solve the problem, I'm going to pass that through my genome to my kids. This is how humanity evolves, right? So instead of just looking at the spaghetti and saying, oh my God, this is it. My angels are showing me, or God is showing me, or the universe is showing me that this house is supposed to be mine, we shoot down the sign by saying, well, that was a weird coincidence. And what is that realtor doing cooking spaghetti anyway in this house? I mean, how desperate are they to sell it that they're trying to make good smells? What the hell's wrong with the plumbing in this house? And we go down this hyper-vigilant rabbit hole of paranoia based upon overthinking the sign that was sent there to tell us, hey, no, man, this is an awesome deal. You're going to get into this house. You're going to save 10 grand. They're going to redo the kitchen. And then if you would just move in, you would find out that the person who shares the fence behind you is an author, a published author. And the reason you're buying this house is to start to work on your book. You know, the universe has many moving pieces, many moving parts. And generally, we are shown a sign to let us know that we're on the right track. And a lot of times we're brought these signs when we're feeling freaking insecure about something. You know, one of the most intriguing sign stories that I can tell you is that when I was doing the Ascension Tour, the director of the Ascension Tour was Melissa Ciana, and you've heard Melissa here on InPsightRadio. She's also an herbalist, and we do healing work together and all kinds of media work. She's awesome. She's family. She's my sister-in-law. So we get a chance to wear different fun hats, trying different things out as far as, you know, work and crazy ventures and all these things. And Melissa and I were on our way down to Boulder for the Ascension Tour, the Boulder leg of the Ascension Tour. And it was so fun. The Ascension Tour was a lot of fun. And we decided to drive to Boulder because Boulder's not that far from, you know, Billings, where I live now. At the time I was living in Bozeman, but it's really not that far. So we figured, hey, you know, we might as well have a car while we're there. Take about 7, 8 hours, 10 hours if we go pokey, and we'll end up in Boulder. But at this time in the tour, I was tired. We had quite a number of stops on the Ascension Tour. We had stops that were in Portland, there's Boulder, Minneapolis. I mean, they were all over the place, and it was so much fun. And I would roll into these towns and translate angelic messages that were very specific for those places in the year to come, and how people could use their land energy most effectively. It was pretty cool. So we roll into Boulder. I'm kind of tired, and I was beginning to think, God, you know, is this even helpful for people? Does it matter the energy that comes through the ground for them? I mean, it matters to me. I'm kind of a weirdo, you know. I noticed every little tick and pop energetically. So I began to think just kind of in my own head. I didn't really say much to Melissa about it. I was just thinking, oh God, I hope this is the right thing to do for this tour. I hope I'm doing the right thing. I began to hope that what I was doing was the correct channeling mechanism. I mean, you know, I got into my head. And of course, before I ever even embarked on the Ascension Tour, this was something I had talked to the angelic realm about. They'd actually come to me about it, and they're like, hey, you wouldn't be interested in telling people how the geomagnetic attributes of the place they live could actually affect their life path, would you? I'm like, yeah. Oh, God, I love science. That'd be so much fun, right? So I intellectually knew this was a good idea, if you want to call it a blessed idea. It's what people needed, right? But here I was tired, rolling into Boulder, and I'm like, oh God, I don't know. What about this? I don't know. I really want to go to Boulder. I was directed to these places. That's the other thing. During the Ascension Tour, talk about signs and wonders, I'd really want to go someplace because I thought it sounded cool, and it just wouldn't work out. All of a sudden, we would get completely redirected somewhere else, and then all these doors would start opening up because the signs pointed that this is where I was supposed to be. So driving into Boulder was one of those places. Boulder just kind of opened up, and it was fabulous. Driving in, I was a little tired, hoping that I was doing the right thing and that people would enjoy it and all these things. And just as I'm kind of in my head about this, I look over, and there's these fireworks blowing off. And this is not during 4th of July. I mean, it's like an off time of the year. And there's fireworks going off going into Boulder. And I thought to myself, that's weird. Well, here's the funny thing. To me, fireworks represent celebration, homecoming, and a victory. Okay? So out of nowhere, there's fireworks. And we were actually supposed to be in Boulder a little earlier. And I think it was me who was dragging my butt in truck stops and, I don't know, eating probably. But we didn't get down there when we were supposed to. We were delayed. And because we were delayed, it was dusky and the fireworks started going off. Just for some special occasion, there were fireworks. And I paid attention to that. I thought, wow, welcome to Boulder. I guess I'm supposed to be here. I mean, did I know intellectually I was supposed to be there? Well, yeah, I did, because I got an angelic message that we're supposed to go to Boulder. Geez, months before that. Yet I overthought it. I let that prefrontal cortex get in the way of the initial signs that brought me to Boulder in the first place. So, I mean, we all do this, gang. I don't care who you are. If you're human, you will eventually wrestle with some sort of insecurity that will kick out all the validity of the signs and wonders you've been shown until the universe is kind enough to show us another one. So here I am. Poof. Here comes, these. And I mentioned that to Melissa. I said, are those fireworks? I love fireworks. Oh my God. It's like we're being welcomed into Boulder. Well, then we pull up to our hotel. And the city that we were in before the hotel was misrepresented itself. Let's put it to you that way. It misrepresented itself a lot online. And it's like it was out of a bad 1990s movie. I mean, we rolled into this hotel. I won't say what city it's in. It's not important. But we rolled into this hotel and it was in the middle of apparently a drug neighborhood. And as we pulled up, there were 12 police cars having a shootout at the hotel right across the street, which was just fascinating. So here we are at this hotel, and so I had a little hotel freak out. As a matter of fact, the room they gave us in this crappy hotel, they check us in, and I'm like, oh my God. I go to the room, and the room had been literally trashed. Like the molding had been ripped off the door. There was a hole punched. You could see the fist mark through the bathroom door. There was molding that was missing off the furniture. Some weirdness was happening in the carpet. I didn't even want to know. It was awful. And not only that, but there was an imprint of human trafficking in that room, horrible sexual assault. It was awful. So you can imagine we got a new room. But you can imagine that, by the way, speaking of signs and wonders, in that crappy hotel, we went downstairs. There was supposed to be 0 other rooms available because there was some convention in that town at that time. And miraculously, room number 316 opened up. And I thought that was hysterical because room 316 is a number I see all the time. 316, 316, 316. And it's significant to me because it reminds me of a Bible passage, actually, from my Sunday school days a million years ago. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever should believe in him would have eternal life. It's just like a happy announcing of love hitting the world. It's a Jesus comment. So I took it in that crappy hotel that, maybe the universe was looking out for our butts and stuck us in a much nicer room, which was normal at that point. But anyway, signs and wonders. Because I was wondering at that stop, I'm like, God, should we even be here? And here's room 316, which amazingly opened up for you. So then we go to Boulder. Here's these fireworks. We roll into our hotel, and I'm worried that it's going to be a crap hole again. Because, hello, we just went to Motel Hell, right, for our last stop. And the motel was glorious. Not only was it glorious in Boulder, I mean, it was just like it wasn't anything fancy. It was just not gross. Right out the door when you exited the hotel, there was this garden of fairy lights that led down a hill. And if you walked down those beautiful fairy lights, there was a beautiful Italian restaurant right there with Italian music playing and homemade pasta and meatballs. And I lost my ever-loving mind. It's like the universe was going, nope, it's okay. We got you in this room, and here's a restaurant, and you're supposed to be here. See, everything's much better than last time. And I mean, and Boulder went on and on and on. Boulder had so many signs. It was unbelievable. right down to the fact that the next morning in that hotel, signs are little, gang. Remember, they're little. The angelic realm, the heavens, the universe, even if you don't even believe in angels, okay? The quantum field understands the patterns through which you navigate because our patterns are then imprinted in the quantum field. Think of a computer paying attention to the binary through which it ran a program. I mean, it's paying attention to every pattern that you have. And those patterns compound themselves, they recreate themselves, and those patterns attract other patterns. And that's a whole manifestation podcast that I should do. However, getting back to Boulder, the breakfast at that awesome hotel that morning, God, it was awesome, was it was one of those freebie, like a get up in the morning and go down and the hotel serves you a breakfast. And usually that's like a dead banana and some cornflakes from 1966, right? So I go down there and I'm expecting my dead banana or some rotten yogurt or whatever. It was a nice, cute hotel though. And they have huevos rancheros, which is not super common, maybe in Tucson in a hotel, but we were way up north. And I thought to myself, okay, we're in Boulder, Colorado, and huevos rancheros are on the freebie menu. I love huevos rancheros. And they had like 3 or 4 kinds of fresh salsa. And man, I was just like, oh my God. So then I go to sit down. And I sit down and I'm putting my plate down. And as I put my plate down, all this gold glitter goes, floof, and then it's all over me. I actually freaking love glitter, man. So it was this weird, just one thing after the other thing after the other thing in Boulder that was like, listen, you are supposed to be here. I understand the last stop had some challenges. And actually, the Ascension Tour at that last stop was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was nothing but amazing. The tour was incredible. The people who dealt with us at the venue were phenomenal. This beautiful, fantastic soul, this wonderful lady who was doing sound, she gave me a very expensive headset microphone because she loved what I was doing. I mean, it was nuts. It was just the hotel that was a little sketched out. So everything in Boulder, from the top to the bottom, was just phenomenal. Yet every single thing I encountered was something that meant something to me. Huevos rancheros, gold glitter. My God, an Italian restaurant. I love Christmas lights. Through this Christmas light walkway. It was ridiculous. Yet those are signs. Now, I could have chosen to throw all of that out the dang window. And I wouldn't do that because I'm me. We unicorns, we like our signs and wonders. The other thing was I had Melissa there. And Melissa was like, oh my God, you sat in glitter. You love glitter. Did you see the glitter? I'm like, yep. She's saying, oh my God, you love Italian food. There's an Italian restaurant right here. Yep. I had a professional sign confirmer with me. With Melissa that trip. And that was just one tiny example of the synchronicities and the signs during the Ascension Tour that were dealt to me to let me know I was on the right path. And there were logistical issues with the tour. It's a big tour. It was a national tour. So there's all kinds of weird crap that can go wrong. And you wonder, God, am I doing the right thing here? Yet our signs come to us when we need them. And if we are unwilling to acknowledge those signs, then that's on us. And the universe is going to know what's important to you. For Melissa, in the case of the Ascension Tour, for Melissa, she's an herbalist. She's got a botany degree. So plants are her thing. And she was finding these crazy plants, which apparently don't grow normally in, I guess, a climate like Boulder. I'm so plant ignorant. I don't know. Don't touch poison ivy. That's my plant advice. So she was like, wow, I found this and I found that, and it means this and that, and boom. And so we will receive the help that we need when we need it. Signs are designed to tell us, yep, you're on the right path. Or they're designed to tell us, oh my hellish God, back up. You foobarred this, and this is a terrible decision. So what's an example of that? Well, before I get into examples of negative signs, I would like to mention that we do as human beings, this angel who's helping me with this podcast, actually hanging out here, just reminded me of this fact that human beings, this is an angel statistic, that human beings will pay attention to a negative sign 1,000 times faster than they will acknowledge a positive sign. Sometimes we will turn positive signs or synchronicities. Again, remember the quantum field stores our binary pattern fabric. It stores our important moments and brings back to us combinations of timing that enable perfect moments to happen for us at exactly the right time to create a sign. I just want you to think about how many moving parts there are to that, considering that there are almost 8 billion people with free will chaotically flapping around like ducks who fell into a rum bucket. Okay? So considering that all of these pieces have to line up to deliver us a sign, to say, hey, you're on the right track. Pay attention to what you're thinking right now. Keep going. You got this. You're in the right place. Enjoy. Considering all of that quantum fabric that's got to be wiggled in order to create the air traffic control moment where I see a firework crack off right over Boulder. Think about how much effort that takes the universe, okay? Yet this angel's reminding me to remind you that human beings love to throw away our positive signs. No, that couldn't mean that. That couldn't mean that. No. But our negative signs, this angel's reminding me to say, we will buy a negative sign any minute of any day. Now, we like to call them red flags. That was a red flag. There was a red flag there. We don't call them negative signs. We call them red flags. So why don't we call positive signs green lights? Green light, green light, green light. If we can have a red flag, how come we can't have a green light? Think about that a minute. So here we are, and we might have a negative sign. And usually we get the negative signs first. The first sign that we're on the wrong path for human beings, gang, comes through our body. You've heard that saying, pay attention to your gut, right? Pay attention to your gut. Well, the saying, pay attention to your gut is there because we literally are supposed to be paying attention to the chakras in our body. And our root chakra, of course, is the largest chakra, sits behind your business, and it's down low there in the hips. And it works in conjunction, of course, with the sacral chakra, which is right where your belly button is. And if you've ever noticed that you were about to embark on something that was just a crap-ass idea, and we know, right? I mean, come on. You know when something's a stupid-ass idea and we do it anyway, don't we? Maybe it's that one extra shot that we're going to do at the bachelorette party. Maybe it's that, I'm going to take this shortcut and I know I probably shouldn't and now I'm stuck in traffic. Maybe it's, God, I really shouldn't spend this money, but maybe I'll make it up at the end of the month and there goes your rent. You know, right before we make a crappy choice, pay attention to your body. You will receive a physical sign. And that physical sign will manifest itself in your body. You'll feel this oogie, low, icky, weird, blah kind of feeling. And it's generally between your belly button and that root chakra. It's right in that little area there. And it'll just feel gross. Like, oh God, I shouldn't do this. Like a dread, way down deep in your tummy. Now, if we feel anxiety up in our solar plexus, that can oftentimes just be excitement. It can be fear of trying something new on a brand new life path. That's butterflies. I'm not talking butterflies. I'm talking the low Pepto-Bismol bummer, like in your low intestine area, like, bleh. That is a physical sign that you're going in a direction you shouldn't be going. And why does it manifest in the root chakra and in The sacral chakra. Well, because the root, of course, attaches us to money, home, hearth, work, oftentimes, safety, routine. And the sacral chakra, where our belly button is, that's who we are in the world. So a lot of times, if we're going to make a bad financial decision, you're going to feel it between the belly button and the root, because who you are in the world is going to be jeopardized if you can't pay your rent. See? So we blow off our physical signs, or we will be on a date with someone and they will enact a behavior that we're like, ooh, I don't want to deal with that. Yet maybe we've been super lonely and, just any old slog is better than watching Netflix again. I mean, whatever, right? We've all been there. So whatever the story is, we blow off the sign. Maybe we can't stand it when somebody taps a fork because it reminds us of our abusive parent or something crazy like that. And this person starts tapping a fork. And we blow it off, and maybe they have a very explosive temper. I mean, the universe is still trying to work with us through the patterns that we recognize and through patterns to which we have already assigned significance. So signs can come. A lot of times we have animals that bring us signs and wonders. And our indigenous Native American cultures, these folks always know the animal life. They never lost touch. Our indigenous cultures never lost touch with communicating with animals. And animals are huge spirit message bringers, even our own house pets. Yet for many people, wild animals mean something. Birds of prey, hawks, eagles, obviously in a lot of traditional Native American cultures, an eagle is a sign of God or a sign of God's presence or Father Sky's presence, a sanctioning of whatever is happening, a blessing upon whatever is happening. Well, when I moved to LA, I didn't expect to see eagles because it's Los Angeles, right? And eagles are super important to me. Birds, I love birds. Oh, I love birds. And hawks, anything that is a spirit carrier in the air is something that means something to me. As a Montanan, and as someone who was raised around a lot of wilderness, and as someone who was raised with indigenous cultures around me. And so when I first moved to LA, you can imagine my surprise when I was feeling really down about some entertainment stuff that had happened. And I was working in entertainment there in music. And something gnarly occurred, which was not uncommon in entertainment. And I was at Duke's in Malibu. I'll never forget this. And at Duke's in Malibu, it's on Pacific Coast Highway, right? It's on PCH, which is right on the frickin' water. It's right on the Pacific Ocean. And this particular restaurant is right on the water. Like literally there's a jetty of rocks. So when the waves come in, if the waves are coming in hard, they will bash on the rocks and beat against the windows. I mean, that's how close you are to the water. So you can sit there and watch dolphins, which are also highly significant to me. And I'd see dolphins out the window, not all the time, but when I needed to see them, I did. They meant magic and transcendence to me. So I was having a particularly bummer time with some bummer stuff that happened. And I'm looking out there and I'm like, no way. And I'm watching this bald eagle dive down and fish and pull a fish out of the water. It's huge, as bald eagles are. And I thought to myself, this is Los Angeles. What the hell is a bald eagle doing here? Well, it really didn't occur to me that in back of me, in back of Duke's, is Topanga Canyon and a bunch of hills. It's all a bunch of hills up there and trees and wilderness and wildlife and all kinds of things. And who even knows where this eagle lives? But eagles eat fish, and this thing was it just pulled some flapping fish out of the water and off it went. And I saw the eagle right when I was thinking, God, I think I screwed up my life path. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I think I'm supposed to be somewhere else. My partner at the time was in entertainment and had a very happy life there. And I really respected and loved my partner at the time, yet I just wasn't fitting in with the LA lifestyle very well. I mean, I drove a Jeep, I was just like, oh God, this is I don't know. And it wasn't anybody's fault. People were beautiful. They were kind. The industry is the industry. It just was a personal style issue. And so I started thinking, God, maybe I just really came down here on ego, or I came down here on, all the things you start beating yourself up about when something goes yucky in your life. We've all done it. And just as I'm thinking, I think I just forsaked the universe on this one. I think I gave up on the universe and went down my own path, and that's why things are so hard. This freaking bald eagle comes out of nowhere and scoops up a fish. And I thought to myself, no, okay, that was a sign of, spirit is with you, universe is with you, God is with you. You're going to live. You're okay. You're not the only person that's had a rough time in entertainment, sister. You'll live. And, things went on to get much better after that. Yet it was that eagle. I was like, oh my God. And it happened so fast. I was facing the direction that the eagle was swooping down, and I was there with my partner at the time. I didn't even have time to say to her, did you see that freaking bald eagle fly out of the sky and grab something out of the water? And by the time I would have made that sentence, it was gone. And it really picked my mood up. That and the rum lava flow, which was this fabulous, like an adult icy made out of pineapple and strawberries. Ugh, with a little rum. It was so good. Anyhow, it moved my entire perception, and I was able to apply myself differently from that point forward in Los Angeles, and really went on to do some really cool stuff. Yet it was a major sign that meant something to me. And again, that was another case where we were supposed to be there later, actually, and we decided to go earlier to beat traffic. So it was an odd time of day to be there in the first place. So I'm telling these stories not to burn up the podcast on my personal experiences, yet to illustrate for you how interwoven signs are to our internalized process, and how animals will present themselves to bring a particular lesson to us. Really, Native Americans would note the animals that came to them on a vision quest because they all meant something. They all carried a different type of medicine for them. And medicine is mojo. It's a message. It's a type of energy. We could think of it as Marvel superheroes having different powers, bringing you a power that you need right at that moment. So animals carry incredible spiritual prompts and gifts. And again, our indigenous nations have never divorced themselves from understanding that animals are powerful spirit communicators and powerful spirit allies. And you yourself might have a special animal that maybe you've seen at a super weird time in your life when really technically you shouldn't have seen that animal. Like it was just too weird, but you saw it anyway. So pay attention to these things. These are signs. Signs can also be money. You've heard pennies from heaven. Angels will move money because they can physically move it because of the alloys the money is made from. And dimes are big angel prompts. Pennies are angel prompts. Whenever you find dimes, a dime is, of course, a 10, if you think about it, which reduces to number 1. And a penny is number 1. And number 1 is all about new beginnings and power and leadership. So if you're finding dimes and pennies, you might notice that just as example, this is very general, but it may correlate with a new beginning that you're starting. When my wife moved into her new location for her fitness studio here in Montana in Billings, when we first moved in, it was this really super cool old warehouse from the 1920s, 1930s, and we renovated it and put a really cool fitness facility and wellness facility in there. And my wife was finding pennies and dimes everywhere. Now, here's what's weird. I helped her move in. I walked those same floors with her. I dropped off countless amounts of literal weights. And a lot of the pennies, and they were pennies and dimes. It wasn't like pennies, nickels, and dimes. It was pennies and dimes that were outside on this landing, and they were super duper weathered, like they'd been there since the turn of the century, you know? Obviously, they weren't quite that old. But I'd walked up that ramp a million times. And believe me, I was looking at the ramp because when you're carrying 100 pounds of weights, you don't want to catch your toe on something that's going to send you flying with kettlebells and break an arm and whatnot. So these things just sort of appeared, and they were old, and they were from the same era, like the 1950s and 60s, literally like a vortex opened up and just dumped out this aged money. So again, remember patterns, numbers, angels, dimes are number 10, which reduce in numerology to a 1, and of course a penny is 1. So it's about new beginnings. You find a whole bunch of those, you get 1, 1, 1, 1. And what does that mean in angel language? It means pay attention to your thought process. That's what 111 or 1111 means. It means pay attention to what you're putting into the ethers. Because whatever you're putting into the ethers right now is going to make a massive difference later. Because what did we learn today on today's podcast about, besides the fact that Puritans were crazy? We learned that the quantum field responds to our repeat patterns. This is why we can also manifest crappy stuff, even if we're not trying, by repeating really negative behaviors. But that is a podcast for another day because we are on our time. And I just want to let everybody know that each one of you is a spiritual Geiger counter. Each one of you can detect signs, wonders, and miracles if you just don't let the prefrontal cortex get in the way and talk you out of it. And you don't let your prefrontal cortex get in the way and talk you into a sign that you know doesn't exist. And that's why you get that funny feeling in your belly like, oh, I'm making a really bad decision here. You know, we got to remember that too. So a little moderation goes a very long way here. But remember, your angels are talking to you chronically, constantly. Elemental life will give you signs through plant life. If you want to go dig a pool and all of a sudden your water pipes stop working properly and your lights are flickering on and off, that's oftentimes not a ghost. That could be the elemental life saying, please don't dig a hole through the ley line in the backyard. Our loved ones from the other side can send us signs. Our attention can be drawn to a picture of a loved one right when we need encouragement from that person. Maybe we smell grandma's perfume or grandpa's cologne or mom's perfume when we wanted to introduce someone that we very much cared about to the family and wished we would have had our parents' blessings. I mean, signs come from everywhere if we are willing to accept them. And even when we're not willing to accept them, they still come from everywhere. There are so many different signs that we can receive. Look for animals. Look for significant moments that mean something to you that recur at a weird time, and your attention is miraculously drawn to them for no reason whatsoever. Or is there a reason? Because it's a sign. Keep your eyes open for the signs and wonders this week coming to you, and I will see you next podcast.